let me ask you, have you ever had a wall that had been patched so many times it just was a real eyesore and you wish that you could smooth it out? Well, you know what? If it's drywall, you got a ton of options. But here's the thing, if you've got an older home with plaster walls, it's not an easy fix. But what is an easy fix is a skim coat. And today I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so let's quickly go over the tools and materials you're going to need. You're going to need a bucket with clean, cool water. You're going to need a finish trowel. And I suggest that you use a good finish trowel because there's nothing like trying to lay down a skim coat with a cheap tool. This is a Marshall towel. That's what I like to use. Next, you want to have a bristle brush. A paintbrush will do, but I suggest that you use a natural bristle brush instead of a synthetic brush because, you know, natural bristles, they really hold the water. Next, I like to have a margin trowel. You don't have to have it, but it's a convenient tool, and that's what this is. Now this tool here, that's called a hawk. What it does is it holds your plaster. It's a very convenient tool to have. So on to the material. Now what this is it's a quick set joint compound. You may be saying, well, aren't we skim coating a plaster wall? Yes, we are. Now there are countless materials that you can use for a skim coat, but I want to give you a material that's going to be easy for you to work with and you'll have the best chance of success. And that's what this stuff will do. Now it comes in 20, 45, 90, 120, and those numbers kind of denote how long you have for the material is set. So if you went with a 20, oh, it's going to go very quickly. So if you have a very small space, you may want to use this. If you have a larger space, you may want to go with 45. I suggest that you use a 90 because it's going to give you plenty of time. So I've got my mud here and I've got it on top of a table. So listen, take a little bit of mud off and smear it on your hawk, okay? And then clean it off. I know, doesn't make sense, but here's the thing. That little bit of material that you put on your hawk, when you load up your hawk, it's going to hold it in place, and I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So I'm scooping it on. So I've got my mud on my hawk, all right? And it's going to stay there. I can take the hawk and flip it upside down. Look at that. It's not going anywhere. This is a wall that we did a few weeks ago for demonstration purposes. Look at how rough that is. Well, I'm going to smooth that out. And this is how you do it. You want to start off with a fair amount of mud on your trowel. Okay? It's a fair amount. And I'm just going to scoop up. Come down. Come down. Up. Come down. This much mud. Okay, so I want you to see the hawk, okay? Because I want to show you the amount of mud that I'm taking off. You want to lightly skim over. This is going to really help you get the plaster off your tools. Don't start from behind the mud. Start from atop the mud and just glaze over. Okay? So that's a fair amount. You bring it over to your wall, and if you're holding the trowel at a 90-degree angle, you're not going to be able to place mud on the wall. So you want to lean it in, tip it in. Now, the closer you get to the wall, the more mud you're going to put on. Okay? The further you get from the wall, angle-wise, your trowel to the wall, the less that you put on. So for this, you want to put a thin coat on. That's why they're calling it a skim coat. Okay. So what I have my first coat up, and this is called the scratch coat. And why is it called the scratch coat? Well, if you look closely, you can see all these tracks. We call them cat faces in it. It's not perfect, it's not smooth, and it doesn't look good. But that's okay because it's going to help the second coat, which is going to be the finish coat, really adhere better to it. It's going to key it in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my trowel and I'm just going to scrape off all the loose stuff first. Because what's going to happen is, if I didn't do this, I would get trash in my finish coat, and then I would have a heck of a time really laying it down smooth. Okay, now comes time to put my finish coat on, and it does not take as much mud on the trowel off the hawk, that's what this is, to do your finish coat. Like I said, it doesn't take much. And what's happening is, the scratch coat, there's some suction going on, and it's drawing all the moisture out of the finish coat that we're putting on. And it's helping it actually to set up and give it a nice clean finish. I'm going to do some up and down strokes. Start at the bottom, go up, come down. Now, the thing is, it takes very little. We're just filling in all the imperfections. Those things that I called cat faces and tracks, that's what we're filling in now. Start at the bottom, skim up, and then come down. And you want it, you'll get to a point where it's a nice flip motion. So I've got my finish coat on, and now we're going to really lay it down, make it smooth as glass. Now, it probably looks pretty doggone smooth, but if you move in closely, you'll see some imperfections, like right here. Can you see that? That's an imperfection. We're going to get rid of that. You want to catch your plaster, not when it's dry to the touch, it's nice and firm, but I can still feel the moisture. It feels damp. It doesn't feel dry as a bone. If you wait too long and it dries out completely, you won't be able to lay this finish coat down to a glassy, smooth finish. I have just a regular paint brush with bristles because I know that this is something that you'll have at home, all right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna wet the wall, and I'm going to start from the top. So I've got my water on there, okay? You're throwing on a lot of water, okay? Because water is your sandpaper. You want to have a clean trowel, because if you have just a little bit of plaster buildup, you're not going to get a glassy finish. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the trowel to remove the water from the surface. See how the water's, you catch that water? It's removing it from the surface, but it's also filling in all those cat faces I showed you. And you just continue to remove the water from the surface. Now sometimes you might wind up with a stubborn spot. See where that's not perfect? I'm just gonna rub it out with a little water like that, okay? Then I'll go over it. What you want to do is you want to continue to do the process until you have your surface completely smooth. Get out all those cat faces and tracks. Don't use too much water because you don't want to get blisters. The water from the surface. And I'm applying pressure. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm just lightly. You have to apply firm pressure. Okay, so we're finished with our wall, and if you move in close, I can show you just how perfect. I want you don't see any blemishes whatsoever there. I'm putting my hand here so you can see what I'm talking about. Do you see where it's perfect? Okay, so we've got the finished wall behind us, perfectly smooth. And what I'll say is, if you remember, we started off with a heavy texture and we skimmed right over it. And you can't see the first hint of a lump. Okay, and that's really what you want to accomplish here. That's what a skim coat is for and what it does. So if you've got some unsightly walls at home, a skim coat is your answer. Okay, so here's the thing. Knowing what to do is important, but technique is probably the most important. So what I would encourage you to do is practice first. Nothing wrong with a little practice before you actually start doing the skim coat. This is Leah saying, you can do this. See you next time.